All right, next up, major players of the Civil War. This is a guy who has one of the best names of the war, General William Tecumseh Sherman, who was actually named after a former Native American chief, Tecumseh. That's where the middle name comes from. And he is a really cool cat. So this guy is also a West Point graduate, also fought in the Mexican War, but he made some claims at the beginning of the war. He was still in the Army in 1861 when Fort Sumter falls to the Confederacy. And a lot of people felt like at the beginning of the war that the war was not going to last very long. They thought the war would be, most people thought it would be what they call a 30-day war, that there would be basically one or two major battles. Either the South would win some miracle victory, or the manufacturing capabilities of the Union would just be too much for the South to bear. And this war would be over within a matter of a month, maybe two. And this issue would be resolved. Then Fort Sumter happened. Happened. And a few people, including Sherman, began to boast that this war is not going to be 30 days. It's going to be long. It's going to be bloody. And it's going to cause a lot of death and destruction. In fact, he predicted that the war would last somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 years and would cause about 100,000 deaths. And he was just a little bit off because the war lasted 4 years and there were 700,000 deaths. He made these claims so loudly, especially to very prominent individuals, including his brother, who was a prominent politician from Ohio, that the Army deemed him as being mentally insane. They thought he was crazy. And they relieved him of his duty and they sent him home to Ohio. Then, after Fort Sumter, that first battle that you've been hearing about today happened at Bull Run. And the casualties that came out of that battle were astonishing. People had never seen those kind of casualties in American history before. And it sobered the country up pretty quickly to the point where everybody began to realize this is not going to be a 30-day war. This war is going to be dragged out for a while. And guys like Tecumseh Sherman were right in their assessment, and he's recalled to duty, and he's recalled by a friend of his who is also from Ohio. His friend is Ulysses S. Grant. They became friends at West Point. They fought alongside each other in the Mexican-American War. They held a lot of the same beliefs when it came to slavery and secession and the Constitution and liberties and independence and how to fight a war. Grant and Sherman trust each other. They are the closest of friends. So when Grant is giving command of armies in the West, when he goes out to Tennessee and Mississippi, and he's winning victories in 1861 and 1862, when a lot of generals like McClellan are losing wars in the East in Virginia, Sherman and Grant are racking up the victories and getting a reputation. His claim to fame is going to be a famous march that he's going to make from Atlanta, Georgia to Savannah, Georgia, which is on the Atlantic coast. Atlanta is in the middle of Georgia. It's the capital. And at first, Grant is going to tell Sherman, your job is to capture the southern city of Atlanta, which was a railroad hub for the South. And he is successful in doing that. And you will learn about the Battle of Atlanta next week. But then he tells Grant, I'm going to cut right through the state. I'm going to march east towards the coast. I'm going to capture Savannah, and I'm going to cut Georgia in half. And I'm going to do it without waiting for my supplies. My army will live off the land. And Grant wasn't 100% confident that Sherman could do it, but he trusted Sherman. And so he said, if you say you can do it, then go ahead and do it. And a lot of people who knew and were following what was going on, when he left Atlanta, did not think he was going to make it. And he was gone for about a month to 6 weeks in late 1864. And sure enough, he disappeared into the forests of Georgia and lost communication because he wasn't going to wait for telephone wire to be strung up so he could message Grant. He basically messaged Grant before he left. He said, okay, I'm off. I'll see you when I get to Savannah. And he just started walking through the forest of Georgia faster than his supply lines. And about 6 weeks later, he attacked the city of Savannah and he captured it right around Christmas time and delivered a wonderful Christmas present to Abraham Lincoln with the capture of Savannah. And it was a really amazing feat. The soldiers, of which he had hundreds of thousands, simply lived off the land. They foraged for food. They stole from farms. They stole from plantations. They were supposed to pay the people they were stealing from, but they didn't always do that. They stole goods from inside people's houses. They set slaves free, and did a really good job. And a lot of the soldiers on that march, what's called the March to the Sea, they said, when in all my time with Sherman, I actually lived better as a soldier on that march than I did when I was in one spot and I was near all the supply trains, because we were allowed to go out and get our own food. We could hunt a turkey, or we could hunt a deer, or we could, pick berries or fruit or get vegetables out of the gardens of the plantations that we raided, unlike having to wait for the normal army rations. And so the soldiers' morale during that march was really, really high. They trusted Sherman. He was bringing them victories. It looked like the tide of war was turning, and it was a completely successful campaign. And it really put Sherman in the context of the Civil War as one of the top generals of the war. So General William Tecumseh Sherman, one of the major players in the Civil War. Go ahead and move to the next QR code.